Hello and good morning. Welcome back. You're still watching TVI World. Right now, you are watching TVI World special report on Prime Minister of Malaysia's visit to Indonesia. And I'm Sesko Satrio.
And I'm Louisa Kusnandar, and today we will have two of our very special guests that will be talking with us on our dialogue today. We have Dr. Kusnanto Anggoro, which is a researcher from the International Politics and Security Affairs, and also we will also have Mr. Andrew Mantong, a researcher from the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
Now, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for being here. Well, today we are going to talk about the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's visit in Jakarta. He is currently in Jakarta to hold a consultation meeting with President Prabowo Subianto on bilateral, regional and international issues. This high-level meeting marks Prime Minister Anwar's second visit to Jakarta in 2 months and the first formal bilateral consultation between the two leaders since they assumed office. The last time the forum was held was back in 2017.
Malaysia currently holds the chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, at a time when the region is grappling with rising tensions between two member states, Thailand and Cambodia. According to Malaysia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the annual consultation provides a strategic platform to deepen bilateral ties and explore new avenues for cooperation in response to regional and global challenges. And we'll talk more on our special report on the Malaysia's Prime Minister's visit to Indonesia.
To start our special report today on this meeting, let's talk about Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. He is currently in Jakarta to hold the 13th annual consultation with President Prabowo Subianto, the first of such meeting between the two leaders.
Anwar, who arrived in Jakarta on Monday for a 2-day visit, is accompanied by Sarawak Premier Tan Sri Abang Johari Abang Openg, Sabah Chief Minister Datuk Seri Haji Nur, Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Hassan, Home Affairs Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail, Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Tengku Datuk Seri Safrul Abdul Aziz, and Education Minister Fadlina Sidek, Bernama News Agency reported. This annual consultation represents the highest-level bilateral mechanism between Malaysia and Indonesia aimed at reinforcing strategic and comprehensive cooperation, Malaysian Ambassador to Indonesia Datuk Syed Muhammad Hasrin Tengku Husin said during a media briefing in Jakarta on Sunday. He said the annual consultation, convened alternately between the two countries since 2006, reflects the strong political commitment of both nations to enhance collaboration across a wide range of sectors, including trade and investment, defense and security, connectivity, food security, and education. The leaders are expected to exchange views on regional and global issues of mutual interest, adding that a joint statement will be issued at the conclusion of the consultation. The previous consultation was held in 2017, making this a timely opportunity for both leaders to reaffirm their strategic partnership and explore new areas of cooperation in response to current regional and global challenges. Syed Muhammad Hasrin said the leaders will also witness the exchange of 4 Memorandum of Understanding in the areas of land border, health cooperation, and information and communications technology. During the visit, he said the Prime Minister is also scheduled to visit the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta at the invitation of the ASEAN Secretary-General Dr. Koh Kim Horn. Anwar will also deliver a policy speech on ASEAN in the context of Malaysia's ASEAN chairmanship in 2025, underscoring Malaysia's ongoing commitment to regional integration and community building. In 2024, Indonesia ranked as Malaysia's sixth largest global trading partner and the second largest within ASEAN. Bilateral trade increased by 4.5% from 111.21 billion ringgit or 24.39 billion US dollars in 2023 to 116.29 billion ringgit or 25.5 billion US dollar in 2024. Prime Minister Anwar's current visit to Indonesia was the second in about a month. During his two-day visit to Indonesia on June 17th, the Malaysian leader and President Prabowo, among others, agreed to jointly develop the resource-rich Ambalat block in the Sulawesi Sea. It marked a major step toward resolving a decades-old maritime dispute while unlocking billions in untapped oil and gas reserves. In addition to Ambalat issue, President Prabowo and Prime Minister Anwar also discussed expanding bilateral trade, enhancing land and maritime border management, and improving protections for Indonesian migrant workers in Malaysia, signaling deepening ties under both leaders' new administrations. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim is Malaysia's 10th Prime Minister. Anwar experienced a decades-long political journey before sworn in as Prime Minister in November 2022. Let's take a look on Anwar's brief profile.
Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was born on August 10, 1947 in Bukit Mertajam, Penang, Malaysia. He holds Bachelor of Arts for Malay Studies from University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur. Anwar began his political career since his time in university in the late 1960s, where he became known as an Islamist student leader. He also co-founded the Muslim Youth Movement of Malaysia, or ABIM, in 1971. In 1982, Anwar accepted an invitation from the Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad to join United Malays National Organization, or UMNO, and his government. Anwar's political career advanced swiftly before being sacked in 1998. After being sacked from UMNO, since 1998, Anwar has led Malaysia's multi-ethnic Parti Keadilan Rakyat, or PKR. Anwar Ibrahim held various government positions before being jailed in 1999 on charges of corruption and sodomy. Among various positions in the government he served included being Malaysian Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports, Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Education, Finance Minister, and Deputy Prime Minister in 1993 to 1998. Malaysia held the 15th general election on November 19, 2022, and it was expected to resolve ongoing domestic political instability. Anwar Ibrahim contested the 15th general election as a Member of Parliament for Tambun and Chairman of Pakatan Harapan, or PH coalition. For the first time in Malaysia's history, the general election ended with a hung parliament after no party obtained a simple majority of 112 seats in the 222-seat parliament to form a new government. Pakatan Harapan garnered the highest number of seats with 82, followed by Perikatan Nasional with 74, Barisan Nasional with 30, Gabungan Parti Sarawak with 23 seats, Gabungan Rakyat Sabah with 6, Warisan with 3, Parti Bangsa Malaysia or PBM, and Parti Kesejahteraan Demokratik Masyarakat or PKDM 1 seat each, along with 2 independents. According to news report from Bernama, taking heed from the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's decree for all parties and coalitions to consider forming a unity government to end the political turmoil, they finally agreed to support the government led by Anwar. On November 24, 2022, Anwar Ibrahim was sworn in as Malaysia's 10th Prime Minister. He took his oath of office before the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah at Istana Negara. Anwar Ibrahim married to one Aziza Juan Ismail and they have 6 children.
Welcome back. Now, before we dive even deeper into the significance of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's visit to Indonesia, we will talk more about his profile. Once again, we have on the studio Dr. Kusnanto Anggoro, a researcher from the International Politics and Security Affairs, as well as Mr. Andrew Mantong, a researcher from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here on TVRI World. Now, first and foremost, I would like to go to Dr. Kusnanto first. I would like to know your objective perspective of the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. He has held power in Malaysia and he's been through all the highs and lows in the politics in Malaysia. What's your perspective of him as a leader?
Well, I think he's a good leader. He has a lot of experience before taking over as a Malaysian premiership in 2022. And more than that, I guess there are some continuities with him. And it's happier that Anwar could be the strongest prime minister during the last couple of years, at least in comparison to his predecessors like Mahyudin and so on and so forth. So basically, at least until today, Anwar has led a somewhat more stable Malaysian government. And secondly is that my impression is that Anwar has very strong tendencies of being a nationalist. It is very good, but to some extent, of course, there are some differences between his approach with his former boss, former Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad. Of course, there are some adjustments that you already made, especially to accommodate about the globalization, the relation with other countries, and so on and so forth. He's trying to strike the balance between the West and East. Well, I mean between United States and China, for example. So I do hope that he will, of course, survive as a leader. And it's becoming interesting, especially with relationship with President Prabowo, if you're looking at it. The most effective two leaders that during the last couple of months. Sigmund has already met a couple of times, a very productive meeting. And of course, it's very interesting because, especially for President Prabowo, for example, because considering his background and if you're looking, hearing from his narrative, President Prabowo used to be very somewhat conservative. Nevertheless, the combination between the two national leaders appear to effectively sideline all those conservative nationalistic tendencies in the sense that they are trying very hard to build up a strategic cooperation improving for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So I'm very optimistic actually. Of course, there is still some problem we have to discuss about that one.
Well, as you mentioned just now, this is the second meeting in just a very short time.
Yep.
So this proves that we are really trying to build a very strong relationship between our neighboring country, Malaysia. Now, over to you, Mr. Andrew. Could you also please share with us your personal perspective? What is your impression on Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim as one of the most prominent figures as a politician and leader in Malaysia?
Well, thank you for the question. Thank you for having me here in TVRI World. I think I agree with Pak Kusnanto that to some extent he's an effective leader, especially considering the fact that Malaysian politics for the past few years has been quite volatile. So we have witnessed series of changes in the administrations, changes of the coalition and so on and so forth. Even in fact, Anwar himself has just been demonstrated last weekend. It shows that there have been some unstable factors with regards to Malaysian domestic political system. But nevertheless, I think he managed to do it better than his predecessors. Like for example, Muhyiddin, in the sense that he's still staying in power despite some of the criticisms. And I also quite am impressed with his willingness to use foreign policy for domestic purposes. Foreign policy to gain some sort of legitimacy and public approval, like for example on Gaza issues, on establishing some sort of agenda for Malaysia as ASEAN chair this year.
So right now that Prime Minister Anwar is here, do you have any insights, or maybe what do you think that will be the topic of discussion between our two leaders there?
Of course, if we follow the news, the biggest highlight would be the joint development in Ambalat. And with recent geopolitical situations, I believe that Cambodia-Thailand conflict will be erupted as one of the most important topic. But aside from these two big issues, I think we have some salient bilateral issues, like for example, on investment, on common positions dealing with volatile geoeconomic situations, caused, for example, like by Donald Trump tariff, for example. And also some of the most, longer term issues like migrant workers. I think these range of issues can be sort of main agenda between Prabowo and Anwar.
Before we deep more into that, I will ask Pak Kusnanto, especially about some things that's currently happening right now about Cambodia and Thailand. They agreed some sort of unconditional ceasefire now. With ceasefire is a positive step, I guess. But what can ASEAN, or maybe both Malaysia, Indonesia, and also ASEAN, what can we do to make sure that this peace or this ceasefire can be prolonged or even be ended?
It can hold, yeah.
It's a difficult question actually, because beyond narrative and declaratory statement, I don't think that ASEAN have actually particular strong bargaining to promote peace between the two countries. There are some problems about it. The principle of ASEAN about non-intervention and so on and so forth. And secondly, of course, we are lacking of technical capacity, I guess, to do something. And more important factor we have is because there are differences between the Cambodian and the Thais on about the conflict prevention as well as conflict resolution. The Cambodians, it seemed to me that more willing to go at the international avenue, just like United Nations, ICJ and so on, where at the same time a Thai approach for a different perspective. They are much willing on the bilateral case with negotiating with the Cambodia and so on and so forth. And of course, the statement that both leaders of Cambodia and Thailand already made that they are willing to ceasefire and so on is very important, and that we must support that one. But there is still a lot of questions, especially about what kind of ceasefire, what is actually the political objective of the ceasefire. Are we willing to resolve the conflict, which is not likely at this moment, especially because different perspective between the two, or just simply to de-escalations to avoid more civilians casualties and to provide more breathing space, for example, for both countries to talk more productive talking and so on and so forth. Because yes, Sesko, you're right, this ceasefire is initial step, and we should discuss a lot of things. For example, about how to monitor the system of the ceasefire and so on. We did have experience in 2011, 2014, I guess, in Cambodia and so on. But I think we have to discuss this one, especially between the leaders of ASEAN. So I don't think that Prime Minister Anwar and President Prabowo will intensively discuss this one. Of course, there will be some discussion about it, but it's not going to be very deep discussion. It's not going to touch on the technical issues and so on and so forth. And yet, the next 2 months or 2.5 months before the ASEAN summit in October, it's going to be very important time for them. Yeah.
Right. Now, Pak Andrew, as we mentioned just now, that this is the second meeting in such a short time. What do you think would be the main priorities that would be discussed in terms of strengthening the relationship between the two countries? And is there any urgency in other specific areas that would be the top theme for this visit?
As I mentioned before, I think the joint development issues would eventually come out. and it would be used as one of the model of conflict preventions in the region, and it's going to be timely too, since we are talking about border issues between Thailand and Cambodia, and showing to some extent that there would be some actually working mechanisms to prevent conflict between two ASEAN member states while maintaining the spirit of being together within the ASEAN community would be top priorities. But aside from that, I think some issues related to Trump tariff, for example, and the consequences for the region could also be one of the most important agenda. I think under Malaysia chairmanship in ASEAN, they're ready, for example, to establish the ASEAN Geo-Economic Task Force. And I think Anwar Ibrahim has also called for common positions for ASEAN to deal with Trump's tariff. The development lately, to some extent, can be challenging because the game that has been unfolding since few weeks ago, showing that each country going individually to the US and making their own kind of deals, it can be contrary to the effort of making common ASEAN positions. So if there is no clear understanding and efforts to maintain trust among ASEAN member states, at some point this could be an issue.
Do you think the ASEAN countries are actually working together strategically in regards to the US trade war at the moment?
They acting quite symbolically together, but effectively, effectiveness in ASEAN is somewhat kind of not in the same, sometimes not on the same page.
Yeah.
But at least to maintain this kind of symbolic agreement, while at the same time for us to try to invent some of the creative regional measures as solutions to the global challenges is still important. So I expect, for example, they talk what should they do after this with ASEAN Economic Community, how to expedite digital economy framework among ASEAN, for example, how to revitalize the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and how to make it like a bulwark against this kind of increasing protectionist sentiment at the global level. I hope both leaders can eventually come to that particular positions.
Yeah, Pak Andrew. Pak Andrew, so with so many areas of cooperation, including the economy, energy, defense, and I'm interested in understanding where the most critical improvement can be made between Indonesia and Malaysia on our bilateral relations.
Well, the most expected element would be on the migrant workers for sure, because it pretty much deal with various complex domestic issues, starting from visa regulations, bureaucratic reforms, and interdependencies between two countries. And of course, some of the cross-border issues, not only on migrant workers, but also on, for example, recent security challenges. So we're still talking about terrorism. We're still talking about the risk of violent extremism that still need close coordination between two security apparatus as well as law enforcement apparatus. But at the same time, there are also rising issues, for example, on online scammings and other international economic crimes that should be tackled. But on top of that, it's actually still related to economic stuff. How to expedite bilateral trade between two countries, how to make investment smoother, and so on and so forth. I'm most interested in any possibilities of talking about joint cooperations on developing human capitals, for example, on developing some of the regional efforts to find renewable energies. We can have some, good reasons to expect that. Like, for example, some of the issues talking about making cross-borders cooperation in Kalimantan to expedite renewable energies and so on and so forth. These kind of issues are the thing that I personally expect to come up from this meeting between Prabowo and Anwar, not only talking about joint development in Abalat.
All right.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later, but we have to see the visual on our screen right now that the Malaysian Prime Minister has already arrived in the presidential palace in Jakarta. As usual, the reception will be, maybe we can say a grande reception. How do you think about this, Pak Gusnanto? It's always a grande reception in presidential palace. How do you see the reception? Is it something that President Prabowo want to say?
Yeah, but from both sides, I guess, because
Yes.
when President Prabowo visiting Malaysia, for example, he also enjoyed a very grander reception from the Malaysian side. So it is good. So this one is also one to show about how not only our hospitality with the Malaysian with the guests, but also it show how serious actually we are, and we have also one way of hiding many serious issues on the dialogical meeting between the two leaders, because yes, there are a lot of issues going to be discussed in the meeting, and some of them is of course a very controversial one, especially on the joint development area. If I remember correctly, in Malaysian side, for example, there has been very chiefly criticisms against Prime Minister Anwar, especially from Sabah and Sarawak leadership, and in Indonesia is quite, yeah.
Apologies, Pak Gusnanto. We have to see the visual now in the presidential palace. This is Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim being introduced to President Prabowo's entourage. And right now, President Prabowo is being introduced to Anwar Ibrahim's entourage in the visual.
Could you tell us, Pak Gusnanto, based on the body gestures and what we're seeing on the screen now, what is happening? What is going on now?
Because we are the closest neighbor, I guess, with Indonesia and Malaysia. It's something important. This
Yeah, it is. If you're looking at the gesture of the both side, President Prabowo and Anwar is actually very close friendship. And of course, we are expecting more productive meeting at this time. Though of course it's not going to be the last one, because if in some issues, especially on joint development area, there should be multiple meeting, I would expect. And the last time was agreed that both sides will set up a Indonesia, Malaysia task force, something commissions, and we are still going to discuss about the memorandum of understanding, what kind of memorandum model actually we would like to have, and so on. I don't think it's going to finish today or tomorrow.
Andrew, tell us
but
your
it's good.
perspective on
Yeah,
this.
but very prospective.
What is striking in these images that we've been seeing is a personal rapport between Prabowo and Anwar. I think we heard that they are some sort of good friends. They pay quite regular visits to each other. And we do hope that this kind of personal rapports is being translated to better bilateral relations in the times of need. Because, you know, sometimes when we are talking about neighbors, it's kind of love and hate relationship, right? We're talking about state-to-state relations.
Yeah.
We're not talking about how netizens of Indonesia reacted to some kind of pop culture issues in social media. But this kind of images is somewhat needed in the current geopolitical and, you know, geostrategic environment.
It's a symbolic show
Yeah.
of their strong relationship that our president is certainly trying to portray to the world too.
Yeah.
Not just to Indonesia.
And you know what? I think in order to move ASEAN forward, you need a stronger bilateral relations between Indonesia and Malaysia. Indonesia and Singapore, the good relations among these three. So the sort of agenda setting issues can be pushed forward, if not reform ideas.
In your opinion, though, what is the strongest ties between Indonesia and Malaysia? What do we have most in common?
Oh, the fact that we share similar ethnicities, similar culture, bangsa serumpun sort of things,
Yeah.
is one of the modalities. And I think the people-to-people contact has also been growing. I think we've seen we've seen many Malaysian tourists coming to Indonesia, many Indonesian tourists coming to Malaysia for holidays. It shows the biggest modalities. And we both the founders of ASEAN.
Yeah.
We share similarities on various global issues, including on Gaza, for example, on Palestinian issues, on palm oil issues, and increasingly on various geo-economic issues.
Well, we do hope that we can cover until the end of this bilateral meeting, so we can get a glimpse of what are the conclusion of the meeting. But I would like to ask Pak Kusnanto again, actually, Pak. With us, Indonesia, we are, as Andrew said, we are the founder. We are, we have love-hate relationship and etc. But when a conflict arises in some sort of a block, maybe you can say like the recent ones in ASEAN. How can this block? I mean, is it to show that there's something that we need to improve in this ASEAN block?
Well, actually, yes, but we are looking at the institutional building that ASEAN has been doing during the last couple of 3 years, beginning 2022, 23, 24, we hold the chairmanship of ASEAN 2023. There have already been some development, and that's already been discussed, a lot of issues and so on. Nevertheless, the most difficult issues is actually about how we are trying to accommodate a new perspective on what actually non-interference or non-intervention is all about. In the past, some people, including in CSIS, actually, we discussed the possibility of something like constructive engagement, for example. We define what constructive engagement actually is, and that is actually one dimension of how that one PF ASEAN could intervene on some other countries if there are some problem inside the countries, like conflict between Thailand, Cambodia, and so on and so forth. But it is still long to go, I guess, because if you are looking at some leaders of ASEAN member countries right now, basically still very much conservative and so on and so forth. So what we could possibly expect in the near future, of course, is just to develop more instrument and mechanism and procedures to conflict resolution and some sort that is still likely to be discussed.
So the relationship between countries in one of the bloc is still effective in your perspective?
It depends what kind of effectiveness actually.
Okay.
For example, as a symbol, and for the gaining something like a leverage at the global level, I think yes, because sometimes your strength is not very much depend on your own strength, but depend on my perspective on your strength, right?
Okay.
So in most countries, like in the United States, the European and so on and so forth, actually looking at the ASEAN as a cohesive entities and becoming a model and so on and so forth. And based on their perception of ASEAN, then we could possibly become more effective. So we are not talking about reality, because effectiveness, of course, is one thing, but international relations is always guided primarily by perception, not by realities. Perception of others toward ASEAN during the last couple of years, I guess, is on the rise already.
Okay.
Irrespective that Andrew maybe know better than me on how internal actually is not quite cohesive and solid. Nevertheless, from the American side, from the European Union, even from China and so on, ASEAN is really a real success. So yes, it's effective based on the perception.
All right. We will talk more into the ASEAN's position and strength at the moment in the world. But now we will go to a short break. Stay with us on TVRI World. We will give you more details on what's going on right now from the Prime Minister's Anwar Ibrahim's visit in Jakarta very soon. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome back. You're still watching TVI World Special Report on Malaysia's Prime Minister visit. And before we continue with our discussion, there's news about the ASEAN bloc.
Yeah, we are talking about our identity as one of the ASEAN countries. For nearly 6 decades, ASEAN has been guided by a shared identity rooted in mutual respect, peace, unity, and diversity, and a commitment to all of our people. These core values enshrined in the ASEAN Charter continue to shape our future.
ASEAN has a shared vision, principles, and values. ASEAN has envisioned a future of peace and prosperity grounded in a commitment to key principles and norms such as mutual respect, non-interference, dialogue, and consultations. Over the years, these values have evolved. We have progressed from political unity and economic collaboration to building a people-centered community, strengthening ASEAN together. These values, enshrined in the ASEAN Charter, define our identity: respect, unity in diversity, peace, rule of law, democracy, respect for human rights, and ASEAN centrality. They serve as the foundation of who we are and the guiding principles that shape our actions. As the world continues to change, ASEAN must respond and adapt as well. Current and emerging challenges such as climate change, digital transformation, energy transition, and geopolitical shifts require a renewed vision and collective determination. As we look ahead, the ASEAN Community Vision 2045 marks the beginning of a new chapter. It builds upon our past successes while addressing emerging challenges, aiming to create a resilient and innovative ASEAN for generations to come.
And now let's continue with our discussion with the Prime Minister of Malaysia's visit to Indonesia. I would like to ask Pak Andrew, President Prabowo and Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim agreed, I guess it was back in June, their first meeting, I guess. They agreed to jointly develop the disputed Ambalak location area. And joint development of disputed areas, I think, can be a pragmatic solution. So, what do you think with this such approach? Is it effective in preventing conflict, or how do you see this?
Well, if we are talking about joint development as measures for conflict prevention, of course it is effective, and it is in the context of Malaysia and Indonesia, it is done within the spirit of being a part of ASEAN community, which in itself obtained some of the strong normative foundations, as well as the kind of shared identity. So for measures to put conflict aside without necessarily resolving the ownerships of the areas being disputed, it can be effective. And since we are talking about ASEAN, can it be exported as one of the measures for other kind of bilateral issues among ASEAN member states? To some extent, yes. But if it is succeeded between Indonesia and Malaysia, it is also a reminder that this is only possible because we are part of the same community, or whatever it comes from. It can come from sense of bilateral similarities in terms of identity. It can comes from the sense of being together in the same part of the community. This also should be translated into other areas of conflict, like for example in Cambodia and Thailand, despite different complexities and different complex. Has it been done in the past? Yes. In the Gulf cooperation between Malaysia and Thailand, for example, this also creates some sort of model. So putting cooperative measures on top of the disputes can be the solutions. The problem is we are now witnessing the trend that there have been some deterioration in the sense of ASEAN as a community.
Yeah.
You know, with, for example, recent trends that Philippines tends to go to US. Some of the Indochina ASEAN member states tends to go to China for measures. This can be discouraging. So if we can actually jump into the latest example, for example, Cambodia-Thailand conflict and how the ceasefire being managed. Yes, to some extent it is done because Anwar is Malaysia chair, but if you see the optic, it's not entirely good, because even though we see the ASEAN flag evident in the room of negotiations, but at the same time we see two big guys in behind,
Yeah.
China and the United States. So if it's not because of Trump threats to Thailand for stopping sort of trade negotiations, if it's not sense of confidence coming from Beijing for Cambodia to step into ASEAN measures, then probably ASEAN is somewhat epiphenomenon in this kind of equations. So it requires two elements. Requires a good bilateral relations, requires a strong sense of identity for this kind of preventive measures to be effective.
I agree, and especially now in this political turmoil that we're in the midst of, Pak Kusnanto, would you agree that at the moment the ASEAN relationship is actually deteriorating? And what could we do to perhaps fix this issue? Especially we have so many countries that are actually in conflict with each other within the ASEAN countries now.
Well, sometime every year, so every period need a new challenges, I guess. So, in the sense, I hope that the Thai-Cambodian conflict would become a wake-up call for the ASEAN to trying to find a new way to strengthen their identity that already been in the past. Because yes, Andrew is correct that during the last couple of years, in fact, there is some deteriorating of the ASEAN from the members, particularly there is one country is actually going to the west, the others going to the east, and so on and so forth. That nevertheless, there is a very interesting perspective from ASEAN, Andrew, that we tend to forget the past and looking more into the future. If you look at now, for example, the Malaysian chairmanship, one of the topic is about how we look at the future, shared future, and so on. So it is good, because imagining future, everybody would be agree that we actually have some common concern, common objective, and so on and so forth. Looking back to the past, it's always been difficult because we have a lot of experience. That could be that, in fact, ASEAN identity can be something like artificial. I don't know, I'm not quite for the ASEAN. I don't really believe actually the ASEAN could have something like identity. Identity among ASEAN member countries is basically something that they found as a long process. So trying to find a way about what identity of ASEAN actually is. What you find, ASEAN identity is very much different from identity of Europe and the United States and so on and so forth. It's very difficult actually to find a concrete, real ASEAN identity. What we get so far is like a peaceful resolution of conflict, about ASEAN way, cooperation, and so on and so forth as an identity. But that what you claim as an identity of ASEAN, in reality is something different. That's why looking to the future is becoming one solution of that.
Yeah, looking to the future, and how, from your perspective, what is the new or maybe modified strategies for ASEAN to maybe consider adopting to prevent um, these situations now surrounding us, or maybe make it better in the future? What kind of methods or steps to be adopted to us?
Well, if you're looking at the experience of Europe and so on, eventually the regional cooperation will be very much supported by people-to-people diplomacy. In ASEAN case, this is not yet. It's very limited, actually. Yes, of course, the role of the government is becoming more important, and that opportunity for people-to-people contact has been becoming more important, and so on and so forth. But that is not quite effective in one way or another. In ASEAN, there are some development that people movement, exchange, and so on is improving, but we still need more time to go to really build that the relation is not only in the political and economic, but also psychological and social one. So I think the very basic of the regional cooperation eventually will decide it more on the psychological, emotional, and social rather than on the political and economic side. If you want like a true regional cooperation, actually.
Yeah, well, if we can talk about the other geopolitical tension that is also happening in the world, the French President Emmanuel Macron have announced recently that France will recognize Palestine as a state. This is amid all the snowballing global anger that is currently happening, especially about the people starving in Gaza at the moment. What should ASEAN do to ensure that President Macron's initiative is followed by other major countries? What's your opinion on this, Mr. Andrew?
The usual modus of operandi for ASEAN for these global issues to create the common positions. So after it is being announced by by France, for example, that they recognize Palestine as a fully sovereign country in the United Nations, ASEAN can at least make sure that they have common positions without differences in terms of sensitivities and so on and so forth. And considering the nature of our regional organizations, the immediate measures that ASEAN can do is to jump into globally concerted humanitarian efforts to expedite any humanitarian access, to stop hunger, and to effectively implement ceasefire as soon as possible. But at the same time, I think there could be some divergences in ASEAN member states' positions with regards to, for example, to what extent the two-state solution is still alive, to what extent we can be and develop warm relations for Israel. This can create some divergences. So creating a common position for ASEAN itself is kind of key now. And it could be interesting though to have similarities between Indonesia and Malaysia in doing this. On the surface, there are a lot of similarities with regards to our sentiment for Gaza, with regards to our usual condemnations of what Israel do in Gaza. But there have been some differences in the way, for example, President Prabowo makes remarks about Israel in the past few days. I hope it's not going to be the issues as long as we keep our similarities on the surface and we keep our common efforts to create common ASEAN solution that could it cannot be an issue.
What can we expect though? What would be the next steps in finding solution with regards to creating the peace that we are trying to achieve from our position as one of the ASEAN members?
Well, it's a long game, and we are talking about the United States here, and we are talking about very intact alliance between US and Israel here. So even though, let's say, we create a collective global voice to support the independence of Palestinians, these two factors would still be there. So to keep the issues alive and to keep the words consistent in defending our position, for Palestinian, I think it's going to be more demanding than this kind of long term. The consistency is the key, and staying to the true principles that Indonesia has been found, as well as ASEAN has been founded in the past, is quite important given the geopolitical context today.
Yeah, the rising uncertainties maybe in the world. Pak Kusmanto, I would like to know your opinion that about these global uncertainties often leads to calling for the stronger ties in a bloc. And I'm curious that in necessity and feasibility of this in ASEAN, can we build a stronger relation between us?
Between us?
Between ASEAN?
The answer is yes. Well, I think if you sense about the psychological atmosphere.
Because you also said that we have actually the same values of ASEAN is actually not that same. How do you see this?
But we have similarity very strongly, especially on expecting to have a better future. Yeah, so that is strong enough actually to bound us. And of course, whether it succeed or not, effective or not, just like the question you always give to me, it depends on what actually our expectation actually is, and about the ASEAN tradition where we focus on, despite common concern, but in fact there are some differences at the concrete and operational level, and so on and so forth. So I am optimistic that ASEAN going to survive and even more flourish in the future. Of course, we cannot expect the ASEAN could be the only cooperation that we have. We at the same time also must go beyond ASEAN, including on the bilateral level, including on the multilateral level, and so on and so forth. So basically for Indonesia, ASEAN is, I don't know if we can still use the corner, I would say a corner Indonesian foreign policy.
Okay, and if ASEAN were to strengthen its defense partnership, what specific form would it take, and maybe also what challenges might arise in achieving greater military integration and cooperation?
What do you mean by military integration?
I mean like technological defense cooperation.
Well, if you are looking at from the perspective of the diplomacy of defense, or defense diplomacy that we have, of course, the most closest friend of us, Indonesia, is ASEAN member countries, basically. And we are good, especially with the Malaysian, with Singaporean, with Thailand, with the Philippines, and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, what we have is in most cases actually very much limited on the strategic option, strategic discussion, cooperation, bilateral exercise, and so on and so forth. We are not really good in cooperating on defense industries. And, well, I hope in future would be changed, because I think it's already mentioned sometime beginning in 2023 on the meeting among ASEAN member countries that ASEAN, especially Indonesia, Malaysia, going to cooperate on some defense industry issues as well.
Very interesting indeed. Now, the relationship between the ASEAN members are still building up, and the Secretary General of ASEAN, Dr. Kao Kim Horn, delivered a video message at the launch of Startup ASEAN, a landmark online platform uniting over 4,000 startups, 1,087 investors, and ecosystem players across the 10 ASEAN member states. With an ecosystem valued of $131.2 billion US, this flagship initiative is one of Malaysia's priority economic deliverables under its ASEAN chairmanship of 2025. It was delivered by the ASEAN Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, or in short, COSTI. Now, the Startup ASEAN is a launchpad for cross-border collaboration, funding and scale up. Let's take a further look on this.
His Excellency Minister Chen Li Kang, Minister of STI, mostly Malaysia. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the ASEAN Secretariat, I extend our sincere gratitude to MOSTI for inviting us to participate in this momentous event. I also wish to convey our heartfelt congratulations on the commendable progress made in advancing ASEAN's technology startup ecosystem. Under Musti's stewardship, Malaysia has demonstrated exceptional leadership in implementing one of our priority economic deliverables, establishing ASEAN Technology Startup Ignite. This comprehensive year-long accelerator program has been instrumental in driving startup growth across our region. We are particularly encouraged by its strong progress, having successfully connected over 11,000 startups with 5,000 investors, contributing to a thriving ASEAN startup ecosystem, now valued at more than $130 billion. Today, we witness the official launch of Startup ASEAN, a transformative initiative designed to serve as the centralized hub for all startups across our region. By seamlessly connecting entrepreneurs, investors, government institutions, and ecosystem builders across our member states, this platform embodies ASEAN's unwavering commitment to deepening regional integration while unlocking unprecedented opportunities through technology and innovation. The launch stands as a testament to Malaysia's dedication to building a platform that serves every ASEAN member state, one that champions open innovation, deepens access to capital, and positions ASEAN as a dynamic, interconnected innovation powerhouse. This achievement is further underscored by Kuala Lumpur's entry into the top 20 emerging startup ecosystem for the first time, ranking 18 in the Global Startup Ecosystem Report 2025 by Startup Genome. This milestone not only reflects the strong foundations Malaysia has established for its national startup ecosystem, but also demonstrates its catalytic role in elevating the entire region's innovation landscape. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, building on these accomplishments, I am confident that this initiative, under Malaysia's leadership, will successfully achieve its ambitious objectives, fostering startup-friendly policies, enhancing ecosystem readiness across all ASEAN member states, and cultivating strategic collaborations that generate meaningful partnerships. The timing of today's launch could not be more opportune. Just weeks ago, ASEAN leaders convened in Malaysia to adopt the Kuala Lumpur Declaration, commemorating the 10th anniversary of our ASEAN's community's establishment. This declaration also embraces our ASEAN Community Vision 2045, a resilient, innovative, dynamic, and people-centered ASEAN, built upon 4 strategic pillars: political security, economic, social-cultural, and connectivity. Crucially, Vision 2045 reaffirms our collective commitment to harnessing innovation, embracing digital transformation, and adapting to the rapid pace of technological breakthroughs. In this period, the ASEAN Startup Platform represents a tangible and timely step forward in shaping a future-ready ASEAN, agile, enterprising, and equipped to thrive amid global shifts. In conclusion, I once again congratulate Malaysia on these remarkable achievements and commend your leadership in powering this platform that perfectly aligns with our ASEAN Vision 2045. I look forward to witnessing Startup ASEAN serve as a powerful catalyst for regional integration, economic dynamism, and shared prosperity across our community. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Well, it's time for us to have another short break because we still have many news after this and still a lot of dialogue. And don't go anywhere, stay with us, we'll be right back.
Welcome back on Special Report. Still with me, Luisa Kusnandar, as well as Sesko Satrio here. We're still discussing about Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's visit to Jakarta at the moment. And also at this segment, we will talk more about Malaysia as a country, where Malaysia has been growing extensively over the past years.
Yes, and before that, Malaysia, situated in Southeast Asia, comprises the peninsular Malaysia and Sabah and Sarawak on the island of Borneo. Its capital, Kuala Lumpur, is a bustling metropolis known for the iconic Petronas Twin Towers and the new Merdeka 118 Tower, while Putrajaya serves as the administrative center. Let's take a look at Malaysia, the Melayu Kingdom, and a democratic monarch in Southeast Asia.
Malaysia, a country in Southeast Asia, is lying just north of the equator and composed of two non-contiguous regions. Peninsular Malaysia, or Semenanjung Malaysia, which is also called West Malaysia on the Malay Peninsula, and East Malaysia, which is on the island of Borneo. The Malaysian capital, Kuala Lumpur, lies in the western part of the peninsula, about 40 kilometers from the coast, and the administrative center, Putrajaya, is located about 25 kilometers south of the capital. Malaysia, a member of the Commonwealth, represents the political merge of territories that were formerly under British rule. When it was established on September 16, 1963, the Federation of Malaysia comprised the territories of Malaya, the island of Singapore, and the colonies of Sarawak and Sabah in northern Borneo. In August 1965, Singapore seceded from the Federation and became an independent republic. Malaysia is the only federal country in Southeast Asia. It is composed of 13 states and 3 federal territories. 9 of the states are the sultanates and have hereditary rulers, generally titled sultans, and the other 4 have appointed governors. Meanwhile, the 3 federal territories include Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, and Labuan. The oldest sultanate in Malaysia is the Kedah Sultanate, which was established in 1136 and is considered one of the oldest kingdoms in the world. Initially a Hindu kingdom, it later transitioned into an Islamic sultanate. The King of Malaysia is the head of state, while the Prime Minister is head of government. Executive power is vested in the cabinet, which is led by the Prime Minister and is chosen from among both houses of the parliament. The current head of state is His Majesty Sri Paduka Baginda Yang di-Pertuan Agong Sultan Ibrahim, and the incumbent head of government is Prime Minister Anwar bin Ibrahim. In 2024, Malaysia's estimated population is 34.1 million. This represents a growth of 1.9% compared to the previous year. The Malaysian population comprises many ethnic groups, with Bumiputra making up the largest share at 70.4%, followed by Chinese at 22.4% and Indians at 6.5%, while the remaining are classified as other. In terms of economy, Malaysia saw a strong growth in 2024 with a growth of 5.1%. This expansion was driven by a combination of factors, including increased domestic demand, strong investment, and a rebound in exports. The year 2024 also had a moderation in inflation at 1.8%. Malaysia's economic outlook for 2025 is positive, with expectations of robust growth despite global uncertainties. The country's focus on domestic demand, strategic investments, and effective fiscal management are key factors contributing to this positive outlook.
Back on to our dialogue here on TVRI World, and we're still with Bapak Kusnanto Anggoro from International Politics and Security Affairs, as well as Bapak Andrew Mantong from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Now, we've just looked at the visuals just now, how Malaysia have extensively grown their city. They have the Petronas Twin Towers. They also have the Merdeka Tower and also the Putrajaya, as where their government is actually centralized there at the moment. What can we learn from Malaysia, from their building their country? Of course, now we also have the Nusantara City project still going on. How are we compared to Malaysia, and what can we learn from them?
Well, I think first is they're more consistent than us, and they know what to change to make some adaptation from, and so on and so forth. I still remember that sometime in the early 1970s, the Malaysian students, many actually learning here in Indonesian university. But back to now, I think it was the other way around. It was Indonesian students actually learning somewhere in the Malaysian university. So Malaysia is relatively successful. Unity and diversity, for example, we has been for quite a long time on that. We refer to Sutasoma and this kind of stuff, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. But in practice, Malaysia is capable of managing unity and diversity. Ethnic politics in Malaysia, for example, is managed quite well. Of course, there are some ethnic tension, but at least there are some political canalizations. Some Chinese becoming this particular political group, but also a member of the others. There is a Malaysian Malay-Chinese Association, Malay-Indian Association, and so on and so forth. In the case of Indonesia, it's very difficult to get that one. So we have the spirit of unity and diversity, but in practice, we're still trying to find a way, what the best way. And that is one thing. So integration in the case of Malaysia, of course, could be actually more effective than the way that Indonesia actually doing it, irrespective of some conflict that may happening. And the greatest challenge that the Malaysians have is actually something in the relationship between Malaysian West, with this in the Malaysian Peninsula, with the East, Sabah and Sarawak. Only sometime last week, I guess, that one leader of Sabah and the other from Sarawak is criticizing Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim proposal for joint development around Ambalat with Indonesia. And it is good to see that both member of delegation actually is also accommodating one representative from Sarawak and the other from Sabah. So there's going to be a discussion. But again, this one is back to your questions, that Malaysia is relatively successful in maintaining that in the diversity.
In diversity, yeah.
How about the economic, what can we duplicate from Malaysia to Indonesia, Andrew?
Well, the economic side is not inseparable from the politics side, because I think in terms of the socio-economic profile, I think we started from a similar starting points. We seek to become a major economic powerhouse in terms of growth in the past. We share similar backgrounds of authoritarianism, but what makes different between Indonesia and Malaysia is the way they create the system. I think Pak Kusnanto has mentioned some of them. For me, the most striking lessons that Indonesia can learn is to create predictability for business, predictability for investment, and predictability in terms of rules of laws. We've been witnessing changes too in Malaysian politics. In the past, ethnopolitics is still issues up until today. The way some of the discrimination felt in more minority race still is the issues. And the way they use identity politics to win hearts and minds of the citizen, still the issues. While Indonesia is probably to some extent a little bit better in terms of Muslim politics lately. But in the time when the authoritarian system made the system, they create a strong and good bureaucrats. which is accompanied by effectiveness. And this is the thing that I have not really seen in countries like Indonesia or Thailand. You know, we've witnessed some changes in the administration in Malaysia for the past few years, right? But at the same time, we also can be surprised by the sort of consistency performed by their civil servants.
Exactly, yeah.
So this is quite important to create some sort of sense of predictability. So when people invest in the country, they know that this investment can be safe from the political changes.
It's more stable.
Yeah. So creating an institutions, creating a predictability is the key. This would enable the industry to create some longer term planning, which can be then internalized in the entire system in the country. And this is the thing that I think Indonesia can learn. You have to have a professional bureaucrats. You have to have a predictable systems, and you have to create an environment that is most promising for foreign investment. Otherwise, we're going to talk about openness to the US, engagement to China. At the end of the day, it boils down to the question whether you can promise predictability for any kind of business ventures to flourish in the country. So this is the thing that I think the political system matters, also the human capitals matters. So you have to also at the same time invest in developing human capitals in education and so on and so forth.
So how close, maybe I want to know Pak Ku's vision about this. How close are we, Indonesia, to the stability of predictability in business sectors, in economic sectors?
I don't know. I'm very skeptical about that. But I think the point that Andrew has just made is going to be very important after the meeting between President Prabowo and Prime Minister Anwar today. You know, this one is an annual consultation.
Yes.
It's supposed to be every year. We have had one. But of course, the most serious problem that we would have is after the meeting. How then the meeting was agreed between the two leaders is no issue. I think everybody agree. But then how this going to be implemented, going to be executed, going to be derived into more operationalized regulations, for example, in the bureaucracies and so on. And if the Malaysian bureaucracy basically, a civil servant more effective than Indonesia, then there will be a gap between our capacity to implement and the Malaysian capacity to implement. If the gap is getting wider and wider, then what we achieve today between the two leaders might not be realized. So I think after tomorrow, Indonesian bureaucracy should be prepared, and President Prabowo should remind the Indonesian bureaucracy basically to fast forward in implementing what we actually achieved. There are 4 memorandum of understanding, at least up to now. There would be something like agreement on the joint development area in Ambalat and so on. But how quick actually our bureaucracies would implement that one into, for example, a more concrete measure. Even yes, we already have, or we would have like a joint commission on joint development, but that is one part of the story. We still need more. What kind of memorandum of understanding actually we have? We still discuss that one. And unless we have that kind of certainty, unless what we achieve today between the two leaders are going to be implemented by bureaucracies, I don't know. Even when we agree who is going to invest in Ambalat anyway. It was a private sector. And if there is no regularity about this government approach, about a bureaucratic effectiveness or bureaucratic law enforcement and so on, there would nobody actually coming in there.
All right, so perhaps as a conclusion, what can we expect most from this visit from Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim to Indonesia this time? This is a very important meeting, and as you mentioned just now, it is an annual consultation between the two countries. From the memorandum of agreements also, what kind of results do we want?
What kind of?
Result.
Result?
Yeah.
Or maybe what you hope, what you expect as most feasible one between Indonesia and Malaysia?
Well, I incline actually to expect that the joint development area because as Andrew mentioned earlier, this one going to be a model of something. I wouldn't say it's a conflict prevention because it's still going too far, but I would say optimization of the resource management. So it's very much limited on the how to manage resource in the and around the Ambalat territory. So still long way to go. Actually, yes, we agree today. We already have a task force or joint commission and so on. But we should also have some clarity of ideas on the memorandum of understanding. First is about the scope of the cooperation. What we are going to cooperate at about resource management. Secondly, is about the political objective. I will not mention about conflict prevention, but instead about optimization of the resource management. Third is about what kind of technical instrument that we actually needed. Four, about the joint task force cooperation that becoming bridge between the Indonesian government on one side and the Malaysian government on the fifth is about the dispute mechanism solution, if any. And fourth, of course, assurance that irrespective that we are cooperating on Ambalat issue, that should not jeopardize any other issues, especially in maritime sovereignty delimitation of it.
Yeah. How about you, Andrew? What do you hope, and as a conclusion of this meeting between Indonesia and Malaysia?
Of course, what I expect is stronger bilateral relations in a time of need. We talk about the geopolitical context. We talk about the regional context. What I personally want from this closer Indonesia-Malaysia relations is, of course, to show that there are some hopes in intra-ASEAN economic ties in terms of trade, investment, and joint venture in the future issues. Like, for example, on anticipating the development in cyber issues, development in search of finding the most effective and most regionally suited kind of energy transition. This is the issues that we have not talked about, but I think this is important. So if these joint development things, and we saw the video talking about startup initiatives initiated by Malaysia as share, can be stepping stones for these future kind of oriented ventures. It could be a good thing, and it requires also more kind of strategic and proactive way from the Indonesian side, because we know that Malaysia, as Anwar showed, has been more inclined towards talking about global issues, towards resolving regional issues, for example, Cambodia and Thailand issues. And the side effect of that, I hope that through this personal report, Anwar Ibrahim can tell Prabowo that despite our global concerns, our backyard is still important, that ASEAN is still important. I've been witness some kind of less enthusiastic comments made by Indonesian presidents or Indonesian government over ASEAN, what happened in the past few days, in the past few weeks. With this kind of rekindled bilateral relations between Indonesia and Malaysia, I hope that our Indonesian government can actually step up the game in terms of making this region more stable, creating what Pak Kusnanto has been saying as the sort of common future for ASEAN, which is more stable, more peaceful, making conflict less and less unimaginable, at least among ASEAN member states, but at the same time, also the more open and prosperous region.
I like what you say there, Pak Andrew, about rekindling the relationship, or in fact maybe the fire between Indonesia and Malaysia, and also taking care of what's really going on in our country, in our backyard, in the midst of this global turmoil that is currently happening at the moment. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, actually, we cannot cover until the joint statement of the meeting because we're limited by time. But thank you very much, gentlemen. Bapak Dr. Kusnanto Anggoro, researcher from International Politics and Security Affairs, and also Bapak Andrew W. Mantong, researcher from Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you very much once again for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for coming here.
Terima kasih kembali. Thank you so
Terima
much.
kasih.
And that's all from us, our special report on the Prime Minister of Malaysia's visit to Indonesia. I'm Sesko Satrio.
I'm Louisa Kusnandar. Thank you so much. We'll see you again on TVRI World's special report. For now, see you next time.